Barry, you introducing us? Melissa?
Melissa's muted.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm from Youth Work Ireland, Cavanmonaghan.
Hi, I'm Neve. I used to be part of the LGBT ally group and now I work as a volunteer.
Hi, I'm Barry. I'm the LGBT youth development worker for Cavan and Monaghan.
And my name's Keelan. I'm the manager of Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan. Okay. I have the questions this week, as I always do, but this time I forgot. We're going to start with a comment that was sent into yourself, Barry, and Cavan and Monaghan Rainbow Youth after last week's broadcast. And it was a question from a young person which said, I'm bisexual and my mum doesn't understand. I've come out about 3 to 4 months ago and there's still no understanding. How can I help her to see that this is real, that I'm bisexual, and help her to understand? Please help me. Please advise. So, as it was sent to you, Barry, do you want to kick us off with your view?
Yeah, thanks. I spoke with this young person, obviously through email last week when the email initially came in, and it's essentially what we were talking about was people's different reactions around coming out. One of the things and one of the problems that young people sometimes face is maybe their ethnic background, it may be their faith, it may be the age of the person that they're telling, but it could be how people have informed that person in the growing up. So it is one of the things you just kind of have to take time with and understand that not everybody is going to react the same way. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to react the same way. We can't prepare for how somebody's going to react either. And I think this is actually going to be a theme of some of the questions that we have today from the discussion we had there. So it's given a person time to come to terms with something that they don't understand. And that a lot of the time is the cause of the fear and maybe the poor reactions is the lack of knowledge of what it is to be LGBT. I don't know, Melissa or Neve, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's just giving someone time to let that information sink in. It can be a shock to someone's system almost. And as we were saying earlier, it's like the people you think aren't going to react do, and the people who don't react tend to, like, you wouldn't think react like do. It's a weird one. It really is.
I was just going to say that even for that young person, it's what does it mean to the parent that they're LGBT? So sometimes it's about the parent, like it's their issue, it's the parent's issue, and what their beliefs are, what they think. And it's like the parent has to come to terms. The young person is probably fine in who they are. It's trying to deal with the parent it's the parent that hasn't accepted it, and the parent has to kind of go through a process themselves of taking it in. And it's something that the parent has to work on. It's not the young person's issue. It's actually something that the parent has to work on. And which might include a bit of, like, you know, loss for the parent, of parents' expectations of what their young person is going to be and all of that. We're not saying the parent, you know, it's that the parent might have expectations of what the child was going to do, or where they were going to go, who they were going to be, and they have to deal with that kind of a bit of loss there as well. So there's a whole lot of accepting, and there's a lot of going on in the mind that, you know, the parent has to process. But I think that the young person, you know, should stick with it and try even to help the parent understand, because a lot of it's around fear and fear of the unknown.
Yeah, like I agree with you, Melissa. It's like those little booklets you can get, like, that understand, like the one we did, or like the one that Barry was showing to us earlier. Even if there was a bit of information there for parents or for anyone, that they'd be able to, I suppose, understand it a bit more. That's it there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and that is it. I think one thing that we need to remember when we're coming out to people as well is we have had time to process our thoughts, to come to terms with who we are ourselves. And using the term "come to terms" is very dramatic, but it's very real, because it can be a massive struggle to figure out who you are in yourself. And as Melissa was saying, your parents may have this roadmap sort of in their mind of who you're going to be, and maybe grandkids and different things like that there, that is going to be impacted. You know, you getting married, all of these things. Now, thankfully in Ireland, things have changed, that there is marriage equality now, and you can adopt and you can foster, and some people can have their own kids naturally, whether it's through surrogacy or whether other means. But these are things that parents don't necessarily think of whenever they hear that their child is coming out as gay or bi or trans. Oh, sorry, and then booklets that I was showing up, we have them there from Belong To. There is one of them that is a guide for parents for young people coming out, and they're available to share digitally. And the other one is a guide for young people as well. Yes, that's the one there. The guide for young people coming out as you. And again, that gives you a bit of advice around coming out to friends, to family, and also the possibility that people will reject, people will not understand what it is to be lesbian, gay, bi, or trans.
Yeah, exactly, Barry. And even like that of talking to them about it, because I know even like years ago, it would have been that if you were saying that you were LGBT, that it was somehow going to be a lonely life. Like that was like an old, thing that was said, that, a mother might be saying, oh, he's going to be lonely all his life or whatever. So it's even trying to explain to the parent, what does it mean to be LGBT in 2020? And like all the things that you're saying, that marriage and all these things are available now, and are, it doesn't have to be, maybe it could be something that they're thinking about years and years ago that's not true to now.
I think there's something there in what you were saying. I think it was Barry, you said it there, around you've had time to process this, and you are probably a bit of an expert in the world of LGBT, because it's such a big part of who you are and who you identify as. So, parents don't necessarily have the background knowledge in the way that you were saying, Melissa, in terms of adopting, in terms of living that life that by no means has to be lonely, or by no means has to be in any way different. So I think that's really important. The other piece, of course, is it's not your issue, but that means that you have no control over time frames. That means you have no control over how long it takes. But just know that it is not your issue at this stage. Look, it kind of leads into...
Before we do go on, the one thing is, it's not your issue, yes, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to impact you. And that's the one thing that we need to remember. It is going to impact your life, especially if it's family. If family don't understand who you are, that can be extremely difficult. And I speak from personal experience as well. Like, it wasn't easy for all of my family to accept who I am. Now, thankfully, I love all of my family, and I know they all love me, and they accept me for who I am now, which is fantastic. But it is extremely difficult. One thing that you have, though, is you have groups like Cavanmon and Rainbow Youth. You have various LGBT groups across the two counties, including the services that are run by Youth Work Ireland, and Melissa in particular in Carrickmacross. We have youth clubs in Monaghan and Cavan. Obviously, we're not meeting at the moment, but there is a Zoom alternative. Like, we are meeting on a weekly basis, so that is an option if you're looking for support, if you're looking to speak with people who understand who you are, who understand all the issues you're going through. That's an alternative. You can connect through us and maybe join some of our meetings as well. And it's just a chance to explore and get your frustrations out as well. And then if we need to signpost, if you need further support, we can send you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously last week, or maybe it was even the week before, we would have talked a bit about the fact that for some people, accessing the likes of Zoom support isn't particularly easy with family in the house and stuff like that as well. But Barry, last week we would have talked a little bit about the LGBT text support line. But also, if it's a non-urgent sort of piece, then you can contact any of the youth workers in Youth Work Ireland. But you can obviously contact Barry directly as well, and your number's there on the screen, Barry. Yeah, that's it. No, it was the first hand. But yeah, you can get on to Barry directly in Cavan Monaghan Rainbow Youth. So the next piece is very, very closely related, actually. And it was after last week, I had a parent contact me. And they asked a question that I know we have had as youth workers so many times over cups of coffee, probably for as long as we'd care to remember, around, we talked last week about coming out, and we talked again tonight about coming out. And this parent wants to know, why the bloody hell do you have to come out? And the reason for asking that is, why does anyone have to justify who it is they love? And why don't straight people have to come out as straight? So why do gay people, why do lesbian people, why do bisexual people, why does anyone who doesn't necessarily identify as heterosexual, straight, have to come out? Why do you have to justify that? Melissa?
Well, it's gone back to, in society, it was made the norm that to be straight was the norm, which obviously is wrong. But there was a whole, obviously, in society. But I suppose when I was thinking about this question, I want to bring up this thing, that there's a questionnaire, you can look it up online, questionnaire about being straight, and the types of questions like you can hand to any group and just say, like, when did you decide that you were going to be straight? And what made you, did something happen to you that made you become straight? And do you think it's a phase that you're straight? And I love the one of, like, why are you flaunting your straightness around? Why can't you just be straight and not, like, put it in our faces? And when you give that, it's just like you can put it on a sheet and you give that as a questionnaire and you hand it to people. They're like, ooh, you know, like, I've never been asked that before in my life. But if you are LGBT, you get asked those sorts of questions all the time. And it's very, very frustrating. And I think there's even a YouTube video of somebody going up to people on the street saying, do you think it's, you know, natural or not to be gay, or what, or is it a choice? And then they say to the person, so when did you decide to be straight? And they're kind of like, oh, well, I didn't decide, you know. So it's this kind of talk of, like, you know, straight is kind of like just the norm that's there, where it actually isn't. And it's kind of ingrained into our society. So I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, Neve, what do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I think Melissa's definitely right. It's like, it's the years of suppression that LGBT people had. That's what it is. It's a society that everyone seems to be straight, but then everyone else isn't. And it's that hiding away where it seems to be a bad thing, but it's not. And it's coming out to, you have to find people like you. And unfortunately, we have to come out to be able to find people like us who are LGBT. And it's stuff like that. It's you don't have to, but in order to find people like you, unfortunately, we do have to come out.
And Barry, you talked about language there in the last question. And I think one of the words that's been thrown out already probably captures the essence of this, which is normal. Why do you have to come out? Because normal. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, what is normal though? I mean, normal for humanity is pack life. It's relationships. It's building friendships and families and bonds. It's not necessarily about just men and women doing that together. It's about community. It's about everybody sort of accepting each other for who we are, and that's what normal should be. That's what, thankfully, in our society normal is becoming. But it's not always the way, and not everybody will accept you for who you are. Why do you have to come out? You have to come out so people accept you, so people know who you are. There's no point in hiding who you are as an individual, and straight people don't have to do that. They've never been expected to hide who they are. So why should a gay person hide that they love someone? Love is one of the most natural, beautiful things in this world, and having to hide that just because it makes somebody uncomfortable down the street, that's not the way anybody should have to live. And I don't know, why do you have to come out? Acceptance. And I know we shouldn't have to wait for other people's permission to be ourselves, but being accepted in society is something that everybody needs. And again, it comes back to that pack mentality. If you're not accepted, you're shunned. Why do we have to come out? We shouldn't have to come out. Oh my God, I could go on an absolute rant on this one. It's something that it's sort of for every LGBT person, we have to come out just so people know the true us, the real me, you know. And that's an echo to a Monaghan Corlin and Oak video from a couple of years ago. Maybe we could share that later, because that is one of the most beautiful descriptions of being LGBT.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I am ranting, so feel free to cut across.
Yeah, I was going to say, fair play to you for not ranting. But look, I think that's fair, because, you know, this parent is sitting there and obviously sees this as a complete injustice. But for you guys who have had to live the injustice of having to justify who you want to love, who you love, who you are, then I think it's only right that, you know, of course you're passionate about it. We're all passionate about it, but you guys have had to live it.
And to be honest, it's a base instinct. Like, for a straight person, it's a base instinct for them to be attracted to the opposite sex. For a gay man, it's a base instinct. It's not something we've any control over. And I know, like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I have spoken about this before. I remember having these feelings when I was a small kid. I didn't understand them. I didn't know the language. I didn't know that I was going to be discriminated against in my adult life for being a gay person. But this is something that I've known. I can remember, obviously not the feelings that I would have as an adult, but I can remember being attracted to the same sex as a small kid. It was in me. It's something that I haven't learned it. It is just who I am.
Yeah.
So
I know, I don't know who said it to me. I think it was maybe John, I think it was before, that the easiest way of explaining it to anybody is for anybody, it's just about who you fancy. And I just love that, because it's so anybody can understand that. So when I'm going into schools and I'm talking, I'm saying, like, you know, it's just about who you fancy. It's about who I fancy. It's about who you fancy. That's what your sexuality is. That's all it means. It's just who you like, who you're attracted to. And it's just as simple as that. It doesn't have to be, you know, really something like, oh, I wouldn't understand that, because it's about who I fancy and who somebody else fancies. And that's it. And it's that simple.
I think it is that simple. It may not be simple to live it though, but I think when it's boiled down, it's a question of, well, the proper word, of course, is heteronormativity. It's a society that believes that heterosexual is normal because we've been allowed to believe it, and we've been made to believe it and conditioned to believe it for so long. So maybe it's time to change the language.
When you look back at civilization, like thousands of years ago, like it was the norm in Greece. Like it was the norm, and I'm not saying anything about religion or anything like that there, but it was prior to, like, it was quite normal for two men or two women or everybody to have relations, and it was never something that was judged or criticized in ancient societies.
And it is changing as well. Like, even with my own kids, there's cartoons and storybooks and everything that have same-sex couples in them all the time. And if I point that out to my kids, they're like, yeah, so what? You know, it is changing for the better, I can see, in terms of even it being more visual in society, that there are, you know, different types of couples that are out there.
And
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Niamh.
It boils down to all equality too. It's just to be able to feel you, but not to be shunned by it. Just to be you. That's the whole thing. Just the quality that we have to learn, and everyone has to understand, is that everyone's different, no matter what. I'm not like you, and you're not like me, and that's the way it is. But there's similar. Oh God, I can't say that word. There's similar bits towards everyone, and that's what people have to understand.
It is really, it's I can't think of the word I was going to use there either. It's very warming though to see that parents are actually coming up with questions like that one though. You know, why do they have to come out? They shouldn't have to come out, and that's really it's very heartwarming for LGBT people to see them questions being asked by straight people, by parents, knowing that people are out there now willing to support young LGBT people in the family home, which like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that just wasn't. Young people were being, and in fairness, it is still happening. Young people are having to leave their home when they do come out. That is still part of society, but it's gradually that's becoming the minority of young people, thank God, and the majority of young people are being accepted within the family home at a very young age. Let's move on to the next question.
I think we're actually out of time in terms of taking any further questions, but I think it was right to spend some time on that and unpack it a little. Next week we're back on a different evening, but at the same time. So we're back next Monday at 5:30 with our LGBT panel to discuss any more questions. So if you have any questions on LGBT, please send them in before next Monday, and we'll be back to chat about them then. We'll also be taking a look at the pronouns and the use of pronouns like his and her and what that actually means. But look, I think what we're saying very clearly tonight is that normal is changing and the language needs to change to match it.
Especially in a society where we're having our discussions all over Zoom, all the socializing we're doing. There is a new normal in this country. We're going digital and LGBT people are being accepted. One thing before we do go, Caelan, I just spoke to the panel before we went live. International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia is this coming Sunday. So we would like people to do whatever they can across social media to sort of show solidarity with their LGBT ally or people around Ireland, because people still feel isolated. Like some of the young people that have written into us over the last couple of weeks, there is still isolation. Now, especially we're being physically and socially isolated, but within the family home, people are feeling isolated. So that show solidarity, of support. Again, flying the rainbow flag. Yes, the rainbow flag is everywhere at the moment, supporting the HSE and NHS staff, and rightly so. We give our best to all them people that are risking their lives to save ours. But again, showing the pride flag or trans flag, bi flags, whatever, on your social media platforms this weekend to show solidarity with people who are the victims. People are the victims. It is still going on across the world where people are losing their lives because they're LGBT. It still happens. So let's stand tall with them. Check in with us on the Cavan Monaghan Rainbow Youth page as well, to see if there's any activities going around the country, around the world. We will be sharing that there as well. And there'll be possibly some stories from young LGBT people in the region that have experienced transphobia, biphobia, homophobia in their own lifetimes. Just if you don't know what it's like, maybe these wee stories, should they come forward, will help you understand.